Welcome to Colonie TV, the governmental educational channel for the town of Colonie. Hello and welcome to the Money Factor. I'm Richard Naylor. Our guest today is Tom Denham, Dr. Tom Denham from Careers in Transition. We'll be talking about unemployment and employment trends. We're looking at implications for job seekers and kind of insights into what's going on today that has changed and maybe what's stayed the same and still interesting. Welcome back, Dr. Tom.
Thank you for having me. I think this is going to be a great show.
Well, I've been looking forward to it.
And I hope our viewers learn a little bit about trends that are important.
Well, I've learned. You've got a lot of experience. I've learned because I prepare for shows, believe it or not. So let's start out with, we kind of promised to tell people something about trends in terms of what jobs are growing, which ones are shrinking, that kind of the dynamics of the jobs available.
Before we have any discussion of this,
okay,
I have to tell people the 3 stages of the career development process. Okay, so this conversation has to be within that context. So the 3 stages are self-assessment, career exploration, and then action plan. And the action plan is the job search at the last part. And the 3 questions we ask are, who am I? Where am I going, and how do I get there? So the reason why I want to share that is that I don't want people chasing after jobs if they don't have an interest or a proclivity or passion for that particular job. So for example, it's pretty common knowledge that nursing is a growing profession, but I wouldn't want somebody to chase after nursing, 1, because it's a growing profession, and 2, because it's stable and secure. I would want somebody to make sure that they're pursuing nursing because they want to make a difference.
Right. That being said, some people have multiple interests in multiple areas. They might be interested in nursing, but also like piano. So it doesn't also mean that they can't be a little flexible, right?
Right. Sometimes you have to make a clear decision. Is this a hobby, or is it something I want to do professionally? Like, so for example, I love mountain climbing. I consider myself an outdoor adventure consultant. I help people plan trips, but I don't make enough money doing that to pay my bills.
Right.
So I just have it in a little box, and I just take out that brand when I need to, but I spend most of my time doing career counseling and motivational speaking. So I would encourage people to pursue their passions, but then make a decision whether this is viable.
Right. They need to go with what they're best at. That's an important thing. Right?
I tell people, pursue your passion, but pay your bills.
I think people got that.
Yeah. I do have some clients who are pursuing their passion, and they're just simply, it's not viable, it's not practical. And so you want to make smart career decisions.
So when you look at the universe of opportunities, obviously some things you might be, I remember when I was going to college and people were saying, engineering, I want to be in engineering. And obviously this is a good goal. You need some fairly heavy science. The physics and the calculus was part of the program. Sure. So not everybody wanted to go through that or could.
Right.
But some of the people that I knew after becoming an engineer at that time couldn't find a job. It was just bad timing.
Yeah.
So what kind of areas would make sense in terms of if you're suitable for it?
Well, here's what I would do. I would run them through my process, looking at their values, their interests, their personality traits, their skills, and then I would start with very general fields, and then I would narrow down those fields and then compare it to what the trends are.
Okay.
So for example, if somebody comes to me and they have a real passion for teaching, it depends on the subject matter. And it depends on where you're willing to go to be a teacher. And we know that we've laid off a lot of teachers, and it's a very, very competitive field. So if you're going to invest the money in going to graduate school and teaching as a career, you really have to look at the numbers. Is that practical? Is that a wise thing to do? And certainly have a backup plan. So once you, let's say for technology or engineering, you decide that I'm going to go into this particular area, now you can start to segment that into civil engineering, chemical engineering, aerospace engineering, applications engineering, software engineering, all the different types, and then start looking at the trends of what the job growth and employment is in that particular area.
Right. So, for example, if you like teaching, but teaching in that area and maybe you can't leave, is really saturated, or people are being laid off, maybe you think that there are training opportunities that might be similar, depending on what age level you wanted to teach. So if you were interested in teaching older college students, say,
sure,
businesses would need trainers. Even though it's business, they still need training.
What I would suggest for people to do in that particular situation is go to the internet and Google, what can I do with a major in teaching?
And that works.
And that works, and there will be a list of alternatives. So you could do the same thing. What can I do with a major in engineering? And if you've decided that you want to drill it down to nanotechnology, for example, or nanoscale engineering, then there'll certainly be some job opportunities there. So there is also a website called, an association called the American Society for Employment and Education, which keeps all these statistics on teaching and where the job growth is, and where people are, where the job growth is not. So you would certainly want to do your homework. And that's what I find in my counseling, is that people don't do their homework. They follow their heart, which I think is an important component of it, but they don't listen to their head sometimes.
Right. Now, I know we've seen a lot in the news where they talk about the unemployment rate. A lot of people looking for jobs, especially since 2008, and we're still up at 7.5% or so, but maybe more people have dropped out of the labor force, so we're worried about whether we should extend employment benefits and that kind of thing. On the other hand, we've had numbers where maybe up to 1.5% of our unemployment, not percent of our unemployment, but percent of that number. So in other words, it would only be 6% if all the companies could fill their jobs. So we have a lot of jobs where businesses are just saying, I can't find people with the skills I need.
Well, the unemployment rate is a interesting statistic, and there are plenty of people who cannot agree on what the exact number is, and I don't think it's an exact science. So some people are saying the unemployment rate is 6.7%. However, that so many people have dropped out of the labor market that it could be close to 10 to 12%. During the height of the recession, it was about 15%. So it's nice to see it go down, but there's underlying issues and meaning, I think, behind it.
Right, and then you have all these other issues, like people are looking for a job as a teacher. Should they take a job flipping hamburgers?
Right, the underemployed.
Sure, that would be, I'm holding out for what I at least use my skills, and I'd be better off based on what I was making on unemployment insurance than I would flipping hamburgers. So if you took away the unemployment insurance, they might be employed, but they'd be terribly underemployed.
Yeah, there's a cruel joke, and that is the economy has created 3 million new jobs. Unfortunately, most people have 3 of them. Because and there's just so many people, especially in my practice, that are doing 2 and 3 jobs, that they're cobbling things together just to make ends meet. And a lot of the jobs that we have lost are simply not coming back.
Now, you mentioned nursing as an area that I know for the last probably 10 years.
Healthcare, certainly you look at places like Albany Medical Center, they just put on a $360 million addition. They're going to create 1,000 new jobs there in the healthcare sector. So Albany Med is actually the #1 private employer in the Capital Region, privately held employer in the Capital Region. So they have 7,000 people that work there. So that's a major employer. Certainly technology, engineering. I would also encourage people to have what I call a sidecar or a side business and be entrepreneurial. Most of the jobs I will say most of the jobs that are created in companies that have less than 100 employees. I started my own practice on the side, and now it's a full-time venture. And I would just encourage people to do something that they feel passionate about, or that they're good at, or that has some kind of meaning for them, just to have a little additional income. They don't need to be making, $40,000 off of it, but even a couple $1,000s. I know when I first started out doing private career counseling, in addition to working into a career center, it started to turn into real money after a while.
So that's something to keep in mind, that you may have skills that you're not really thinking about how you might exploit them.
Right. I mean, you look at people like Mrs. Fields and her cookies, and there's a commercial on TV about, how many businesses are started out of garages,
There was a picture in the paper, a little blurb recently about a company that now delivers milk. Well, they delivered milk in the 50s, not so much in the 70s,
yeah.
and it's back.
Yeah,
in a small way, I guess, but.
Well, it's interesting. America was not founded on 9 to 5. I mean, the Pilgrims didn't come here and say, we're only going to work, 9 to 5.
No, they didn't work on Sunday, but
they probably didn't work on Sunday. But I'm sure if a deer crossed their path on a Sunday, I'm sure they took a shot at it.
I don't know. They were very strict.
Eating was also a priority for them, I hope.
Right.
But people didn't come to this country to work 9 to 5. People started businesses. So I would encourage people to look into that, and certainly not for everyone, but it should be something that you should at least explore and consider.
So you mentioned nursing, you mentioned engineering and technology. You probably have to say something about either Global Foundries or the knock-on effect of that type of firm.
Yeah.
And what kind of skills do people need to develop for that kind of job?
Well, it's interesting. I think Global Foundries is a fascinating company. They have come into our area. They are employing thousands of people. They are going to continue to employ more people and add new jobs to our marketplace. The jobs there tend to be very technical. I would encourage people to go to their website and take a look at the types of jobs that they're looking for, and they're very, very specific. I have an interesting statistic here. By 2018, New York State will create 1 million new jobs requiring more than a high school degree, but less than a 4-year degree. So there are many jobs at places like Global Foundries that institutions like Hudson Valley Community College and Schenectady County Community College can train you for. And I would encourage people to contact Hudson Valley Community College, sit down with an admissions counselor, and also sit with somebody in the Career Center and see what kind of training programs that they have. Hudson Valley Community College also has a satellite campus in Malta where they do a lot of the feeder training for Global Foundries.
Yeah, I think they're actually a model that would serve for the whole country of how we get prepared a little bit for the age of robots, because when the I think it was 50s, maybe Packard wrote a book about the leisure class and all these predictions. Well, the computers are going to let us stay at home all day and just enjoy ourselves. They forgot one thing: nobody's going to pay you to stay at home all day. So that created a bit of a problem with the whole thing.
Actually, can I just contradict that?
Yes.
People are paid to stay home. It's called working on the weekends on the smartphone.
I
know what you meant. I know what you meant. But one of the things that troubles me the most is the blurred lines between work and home. That this trend in America is that I even have down here on my list. 24% of employed Americans reported that they work at least some hours at home each week, and sometimes that's not out of choice.
Right. Once you get that smartphone, you're not sure it was so smart that you took it.
I have a dumb phone, and I don't have the internet at home. I don't have cable. I don't have a lot of technology at home. I'm on the internet probably 40 hours a week. I don't want to be on the internet on the weekends. I want to spend it with my family and do the other outdoor passions that I have. But we simply can't put those phones down. I think we are psychologically dependent on them, and we are not very good at setting boundaries, and that is not Steve Jobs' fault. That's our fault. But the lines between work and home have been blurred, and we're part of the problem, because if you send email on the weekends, you're going to get email back, and then it's going
Well,
to be...
because other people are out there doing the same thing you're doing.
That's right, and you're building up an expectation that I'm available, so please send me an email on a Saturday night that's work-related and I will deal with it.
Or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Or 3 o'clock in the morning because I have my cell phone next to my bedside table.
Right.
So I think it's really important psychologically to disconnect so that on Monday morning we can go back to work and be refreshed. You know, we spend more time on our cell phones than in many other aspects of our lives. I would dare say it's very hard to find somebody that could disconnect from their cell phone for 24 hours. It would be very few people.
Let's go into this more, but I want to keep probing a little bit on different jobs until I feel like we've really
sure.
knocked that one out. We have technology, we have nursing, we have engineering, the global foundries kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Any professions that you see locally that fit into the more than high school, less than college, some kind of technology, but not necessarily computer?
You know, most people that come to me, they're mid-career, midlife, and they say, I don't know what I want, but I know it's not this. I don't have a lot of clients coming to me saying, I want to go into some kind of technology or engineering kind of firm. Again, if you look at Global Foundries, it's a technology firm. If you're not into technology or building technology or using the hardcore math and science that's required to get into those types of jobs, it's probably not for you, but that's where the job growth is.
Now, what about sales that might be connected to something with Global Foundries?
Sure. And at the same time, you would have to know the technical aspects of that. Are you willing to learn that? So, for example, somebody who's in engineering, I actually have a client that is in engineering that is maybe going into more of a sales role for these high-end products, these high-end technical products that some of them cost $1 million to do. Well, he has a PhD in engineering, so
he's got a big advantage there.
He's got a big advantage, and he's going to command quite a salary.
Well, especially if he's got both of those skills at the same time. So you're a good salesman, and you understand engineering?
Right.
Wow.
Right. I will say this, though. The trend now is for more credentials, not less. And obviously, we are having a lot of our young people graduating from college and being underemployed, doing jobs that do not require an advanced degree. But in the long term, you need to have a bachelor's degree. In my estimation, in 2014, a bachelor's degree is what it was, is what a high school degree was when I was growing up. I see people needing to have at least a master's degree, and I would dare say right now that 25 years from now, you're going to see the advent of the double master's degree. Mark my words on this one. Double master's degree is what is going to set you apart, because now the master's degree is starting to set you apart now, but we've got credential inflation going on here. And it's one way for employers to sort you out. I mean, if I've got a stack of resumes and the job only requires a bachelor's degree, and I can go through, I can take out all the high school dropouts, all the people that only have a high school degree, all the people that have a 2-year degree, take out all the people that have a 4-year degree. Now I've taken this application stack from 100 down to 10. Now that's more manageable for me to contact and interview.
And you've still got all the skills in there that you were looking for, but you've got some with multiple skills.
And you're right. I think employers today, when you read these job descriptions, I think a lot of job applicants look at them and say, how does anyone have all those things? And employers today put those in there as sort of a wish list. And maybe they're not going to get somebody that has exactly everything, but they may have somebody that has 85 or 90% of those things in there.
So that's, and then you figure out their strength and you apply them, you apply that person and their strengths in the way that you can best deploy them. I was thinking, that there's geographic issues also. We can talk about teachers, but maybe they need teachers in Texas. Maybe they need teachers in
other foreign countries.
Is it South Dakota or North Dakota? Maybe it's Montana, where they're doing so much
Well, the Bacan
fracking.
oil fields in North Dakota is got more opportunities than I think anywhere else in the country, but there's no place to live.
Right.
Because they can't build houses fast enough.
Right.
I mean, people are sleeping out of their trucks
And they're spending
things like that.
$10,000 for a mobile home,
Yeah,
probably.
it's
a room.
It's just incredible. And I would probably say, yeah, they probably do need teachers out there. But again, it goes back to your values, your interests, your personality traits and skills. Do you want to move to North Dakota? I've been in North Dakota. I like North Dakota, but I wouldn't want to live there.
Right. I've heard that about New York City.
Yeah, and as we're talking about trends, there's always wants versus needs. I mean, it would be great to have your ideal job, and that's what I always encourage people to do. But you know, people have bills to pay.
Well, there's also an age thing. So you may be married and have kids. You're going out now. You're going into the workforce. Your husband's making a lot more than you because he's been in the workforce. It's kind of hard to move the family because you can get a teaching job in St. Louis. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
But if you're just starting out of college, to say that I'm not going to move away from here, you might be really cutting your nose to spite your face. Sure. Because you go somewhere else for 5 years and then maybe you come back.
Sure. Yeah. I have somebody that is going to be moving to Ireland for a year and working over there. A young person, 22 years old, wants to experience another culture. And I often think that, especially with our young people, you have between 20 and 25 years old to experiment and explore, and then after 25 you have to start getting serious.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah,
and 30 is kind of like, I don't want that son in the basement anymore.
Right, exactly.
That's like eviction time.
Yeah. So unless they're paying rent.
Right.
Unless they're paying rent, sure.
We were talking a little bit before the show about nonprofit and government.
Yeah.
There's a wide range of occupations in those two areas. Now, this might not be the best place to try to get a job in government or nonprofit right now. Well, but how do you see that part of the market?
Well, you know, it's the interesting thing is the government is always hiring and the nonprofit field is always hiring. So anytime you say there's a hiring freeze, I guarantee it, there are opportunities there.
Well, some of these positions are essential.
Yeah,
and they can't work without them.
Right. The job market is always fluid. So people are leaving jobs, and those jobs have to be replaced. So one of the things that I find interesting is that the private sector, we have three sectors. We have the government sector, we have the nonprofit sector, and then we have the for-profit sector. The for-profit sector represents about, well, I want to tell you two numbers. One, I did a little research study. In 2001, the for-profit sector was 75% of the job market. Let me see if I got the numbers here. The government sector was 16%, and the not-for-profit sector was 9%.
25.
Okay, so that was 2001. In 2014, it virtually did not change. Okay, so the for-profit sector was 74%, government stayed the same at 16%, and not-for-profit was 10%. And many people, when they're looking for jobs, they may just be thinking of the for-profit sector, and then tangentially maybe thinking about the government, but oftentimes neglect opportunities that are in the nonprofit sector.
And I've come across people who are really good at some things that the nonprofit sector really needs, such as fundraising, marketing. If you're really good at those things, and you can maybe help the American Cancer Society improve how much money they bring in and lower the cost of bringing that money in, you're worth a lot more than your salary.
I think some people are afraid of the nonprofit sector and don't take it into consideration because there is a stereotype that it's low pay. There are opportunities in the nonprofit sector where you can make a living. What it requires is for you to do your research.
In terms of which jobs are good or
and what nonprofits are good. So for example, if you're working for a larger nonprofit, obviously your salary is going to be higher than if you're working for a nonprofit that has 6 employees.
And just to put some context with this, I interviewed some accountants who work solely with nonprofits and trying to help them with their controls. And they said the idea for a nonprofit of saying we're a nonprofit and we don't have profit is really a dangerous thing. Because if you don't have profit, you can't do what you're supposed to be doing.
That's why they call them not for profit.
Right.
Not for profit.
That's a better way to say
but
it.
all the lay people say nonprofit.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those are the three sectors of the economy.
One area I wanted to get into,
Yep.
but we can move back or around if you think of something I've missed. We think of computers and we think of engineers, and sometimes the business people, of course. You can make a lot of money if you're CEO of General Motors, although it's a cutthroat business there. And their salaries are high. But just because you're wearing a tie doesn't mean your salary's high. So an engineer may wear a white lab coat, a doctor wears blue or white, an electrician often wears a uniform. But some of our positions that we really need are in this skilled trades area. And I wish that everybody would just kind of forget the uniform and look at the person and think about these trades as a really important opportunity for if that's what you're good at.
Right. And it's always a combination of interests plus skills. I tell, unfortunately, I tell people when they contact me and I tell them my summary services and I go over my fees, I tell people I charge the same rate as a plumber. Now I have a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a doctoral degree, and I'm charging the same rate as a plumber.
But if my basement's leaking, I don't need you. I need a plumber.
That's what, right? And some people will say that, and I'll say, here's my fee. And they'll say, well, that's kind of expensive, Dr. Tom. And I'll say, well, if a plumber came to your house for 5 hours, what would you pay them? And they'd say, oh, I'd pay them at least that, but at least my pipes would be fixed. And then I try to tell them that your career is equally important as your pipes. But it's sort of that immediate need. I mean, electrician, plumber, carpenter, handyman. Yeah, there's something to be said about the skilled trades. I just don't see a lot of people having an interest in going into those skilled trades.
That, and when you look at the skills needed for the skilled trades, they're just as important as other jobs. So if you have somebody who's really creative and they go into the skilled trade, they can solve a problem where somebody else would apply the same thing that it says in the book, right?
Yeah.
So they can save you a lot of time, a lot of money, and maybe a lot of aggravation, and might even protect your home from burning down,
right?
Because they can see something that other people aren't seeing. So it's really important that people who are good at that go into that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
I hope I didn't put myself in a corner there.
No,
Let's see,
no,
where do we want to go next?
No.
How about dissatisfaction and dealing with that? What's going on in the world in terms of trends?
I was just about to say, what is going on in the world? Because, interesting, in my practice, I built my practice on career dissatisfaction. I get a phone call every day from somebody who's dissatisfied. Some of the reasons why they're dissatisfied, they are not feeling appreciated. There's no room for advancement. Too much work, office politics, and again, the blurred lines between work and home. I just had a client this morning, and he's got to work this weekend. He's got to cover for somebody, so now he's got to work through the weekend. We have very little boundaries for these types of things. So, here's an interesting statistic, and 53% of respondents in an online survey said that if they had to do it over again, they would not choose the same career. That was from the Business Review. 24% of employed Americans report that they work at home at least each week. And then vacation, which is one of my favorite topics, because I think work is very important. It tends to define us. We spend more time at work than in any other aspect of our lives.
And it can be very fulfilling.
It can be very fulfilling. I feel like I have my ideal dream job. But listen to this. On average, Americans receive the fewest annual vacation days, 14, compared to Australia, which has 17, Canada, which has 19, Britain has 24, Germany 27, and France at 39. Another statistic, that's from Expedia.com, by the way. Another statistic, Americans spend more time commuting 100 plus hours, then they spend on vacation 80 hours, and that's from the Census Bureau. So
Well, some of that's demographics. We have a country, it's not Russia, but it's very spread out.
Sure.
And then with our sprawl, it's
I just talked
happens.
to one of my friends yesterday, and she lives on Long Island. She's getting married. They just moved into a house that's farther out on Long Island, and it takes an hour and a half to get to work. That's 3 hours out of your day that you're commuting.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time. And an hour and a half commute one way, or 3 hours in a day, that's tiring. That wears on you after a while.
Well, at least the train is better than the drive, but still. I assume they're taking a train down
They're
there.
taking a train.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who have to drive an hour to get to work.
Yeah.
And that's not unusual at all. So the satisfaction aspect, in that case, really doesn't have as much to do with the career as it does with, I guess, trying to have the backyard and the place for the dog as well as the job.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. When it comes to satisfaction, I think we want our careers to fulfill us in ways that a generation or 2 generations ago we did not ask of work. My grandfather was in the scrap metal business. I can't imagine that was particularly satisfying.
You mean he didn't grow up as a child saying, I have this vision and I want to be surrounded by metal?
Yeah, maybe there's some people who do. I have a tendency that my grandfather was not, did not find it very, very passionate about. But that generation, they went to work, they did their jobs, they didn't complain, and they came home and they had their family time. Now we want work to be fulfilling. Emotionally fulfilling. We want it to be spiritually fulfilling. We want it to be part of our calling and the work that we were meant to do. We want it to be financially fulfilling. We want to have a 401k. We want it to be creative. We want it to be flexible. We want to own our own projects. And that type of work is hard to find. I'm not saying impossible, but you really have to do a lot of career self-management and work. And for me personally, I have found the ideal job in starting my own business. What I do for a living is the full expression of me.
This might be an impossible question to go along with that, but do you think the bigger problem of the two, if I wanted a really good job, is more the problem of the job scarcity or the lack of understanding and willingness to learn what I need to learn and get the skills I need to have in order to get the job I want?
Neither.
Well, that's an interesting answer. Hadn't anticipated that.
I think the hardest part of having a fulfilled career is doing the self-assessment, which people don't do. If you ask somebody to describe their ideal job, they would describe it in very vague terms. They are not clear, and that's how I'm that's how I'm building my business. Is most of the people that come to me are not clear. I had somebody that called last night, and I said, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" She couldn't tell me where she could see herself in 5 days.
So once you know what you're good at and what you like, it's not so hard to figure out what you need.
Well,
I guess that's what you're saying.
So
it's not the hardest part.
It's not the hardest part. The hardest part is getting clarity on the work that you were meant to do. Now, not to sell my services here, but there has to be a process. Self-assessment, you're looking at your values, interests, personality traits, and skills. You're doing that through assessment testing, a questionnaire, and through career counseling. Once you do that, you match that with potential jobs, and then you prioritize your jobs into ideal jobs, realistic jobs, and safety or survival jobs. Most people do not do this. 99% of Americans don't do this. So if you don't know what you want, it's hard to go out and get the skills for something that you don't. It creates a problem. It's a cart before the horse. So for example, I have people that come to me and they say, "Oh, I think I want to go to graduate school." And I'll say, "What do you want to go to graduate school for?" And they're like, "I'm not really sure."
Because I need to have more skills.
Because I need to have more skills, and I need to have more education.
But I don't know what.
And I need more credentials, but I don't know what it's for. Well, that's a colossal waste of money.
Right. Okay, so
Clarity, clarity, clarity. I wish I could change my name.
to clarity?
Dr. Clarity. Dr. Clear, that's
Well,
what I
you
would
could.
change my name to. Come to me, get clear. If I wrote an article, it's on the internet, it's called Focus First, Network Second. If I can get people focused and then networking is the strategy.
I think I did see a statistic that half the jobs, and that was your statistic though.
Yeah, 80% of available jobs are never advertised, and over 50% of all employees get their jobs through networking.
So even the 30% of those network jobs that were advertised, they're not given to somebody who's going on the computer and putting in a cold application.
Networking as a job search tool, that trend has never gone away. We're doing different types of networking. See, it's interesting, we have a show on career trends. It always comes down to networking, focus, networking, and LinkedIn. Getting focused on what you want, and then building your circle of influence.
Well, if you look
and that takes time to build a circle of influence.
It does for some people and less for others, right? Because if you're in a community, your parents know a lot of people who are in business, you've got a very powerful network to start out with.
Yes.
Whereas if you've been coming home from work and sitting in front of the TV set, talking to the same people that you go bowling with, and none of them have good jobs,
well, one of the
you don't have a network.
Well, one of the career trends is career self-management. And maybe a generation ago, there was a social contract between the employer and the employee that if you trade your time, I will give you dollars and I will give you security. And that contract has been broken. So for somebody to just come home and plop themselves down and not continue to build their network, they are going to run into real major problems, because most people's idea of job searching is going to the internet and applying for jobs. Well, you've got 15 million Americans that are doing that technique. And again, I've written another article called Eat and Drink Your Way to Your Next Job. And then you can find it on the internet, Eat and Drink Your Way to Your Next Job. And it's all about buying people cups of coffee and networking. But now the trend also is to use technology to manage your network, and that would be LinkedIn. So instead of having a Rolodex, back in the day, now you have your electronic Rolodex with LinkedIn. And again, another trend is certainly branding yourself and promoting yourself through social media. Your online reputation is your reputation.
So you're really trying to make everybody an entrepreneur of a sort.
Everyone is a brand. People pay me money because I'm Dr. Tom, career counselor, motivational speaker. They do not pay me money because I can, change your oil or clean your teeth or do surgery. So I have a particular brand. You are a librarian. You know libraries. I have an issue with either libraries or books. I come to you. So personal branding, absolutely very important.
I think we've talked a little bit about a trend, not in terms of the short trend, but the long run trend. You mentioned we used to have a contract with workers, and that's gone. Mm-hmm. You could go back to the Industrial Revolution. That was no contract. That was you leave here, you're dead.
Right.
And you work 12 hours a day, and there's nothing else. You know, this is the thing. Today we're looking at macro trends, right? We're looking at things that even if I am going to do something with carpentry where there's not a computer on that piece of wood, I may have to know how to program the new system that's going to be part of somebody's smartphone so that when they're driving down the road, they can turn their lights on and off. So, there are these advantages that you get by being able to have extra skills, and a lot of times they do have something to do with computers.
Yeah. One of my pieces of advice for folks is to constantly update your skill set, constantly build your circle of influence, career self-management, goal setting. My thought is that you're on your own now. You are on your own. The government is not going to take care of you. Your employer's not going to take care of you. You could be at work. You could get a 5-star review, and then next month the boss comes in and says we're going in a different direction.
Yeah, that just happened to a camera shop, Camito, I think, national. It happened to two major pizza chains this week. Sbarro is in chapter, I don't know which one, but in bankruptcy court, and I forgot the other one, but all in 1 week.
Yeah, I don't. The whole concept of job security has gone out the window. The only job security you have is the security you create. The people with the biggest circles of influence, and you can build that circle of influence, those are the people that are going to have job security. So people ask me, like, what are the secure jobs? Well, we used to think postal workers had secure jobs, teachers used to have secure jobs, state workers have secure jobs, and federal government employees. Well, federal government, ask them what a furlough means to them.
Right.
Okay.
I spoke to a teacher who's still paying furlough from the problems that the state had a couple years ago because their union negotiated late, and they're still losing 20% a week.
I think it's real important to get your finances in order too. I think it's in these tough times. I think it's really important to live below your means, work with a financial planner, have an emergency fund in case you lose your job, have an emergency fund for, if you're thinking about going back to school. You've really got to be strategic about these things.
And the image you gave me of keeping up to date, I think if we put that across all occupations, it doesn't matter what you do, keep up to date on what's going on in your field and gain those skills.
Absolutely. I mean, you could go to an interview and they could say, well, what are the top trends in this industry? If I was interviewing you for a library job, I would say, what is the #1 trend that is facing libraries today?
And I could tell you.
And you could tell me. So I think very important to keep up your online reputation. So, for example, you go apply for a job. The trend is that they're going to go to Google. They're going to go search for your name. What comes up? Are you happy with what comes up? You can really shape that. You can create it. You can protect it. You can promote it. They are going to look at your LinkedIn profile. I just had somebody who is going to make a job transition. She doesn't have LinkedIn. Well, that's code for I don't stay current on trends. I'm not up on technology, and I'm falling behind.
And if you interview somebody, they're going to check you on LinkedIn.
Yes, they are too, right. And they're going to look under those recommendations. So this requires people to do things that you didn't have to manage 25 years ago. There was this no concept of this personal branding 25 years ago. But with the advent of the internet, everyone is a brand and is marketing themselves out there that way.
Thank you, Dr. Tom.
It's been a fantastic show again, and I hope folks got something out of it. And if they would like to contact me, I have my contact information, I think, at the end of the show, and I'd be happy to help anyone I can.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show, that you have a great week, and see you next time. Take care. Welcome to Colonie TV, the governmental educational channel for the town of Colonie.